Hey there, folks. Doc Pepper here, and it's time for me to answer some of your questions. Before we begin, just let you know that I've done some things. I've reworded some of the questions for the sake of brevity and clarity. Also, I have combined some questions that I get asked frequently into kind of one mega question. Something's going on outside. Oh well, I'll ignore it. Let's see here. I don't know how long this is going to be. I've whittled it down to probably 10 questions or so. Might do more if time permits, but if this thing goes really long, I'll probably cut it off right there. There's probably going to be multiple parts. I'm not so sure, but anyway. With all that said, let's begin. What is your wrestling history? This is actually the question I get asked the most often, so I wanted to get this one out of the way to start off. I'm 21, born in 1989, and so when I was in grade school, this would be 97. I was 8 years old. There were some folks that I wanted to be friends with, and they were big wrestling fans. Okay, 97, every kid was a wrestling fan, and so I started watching wrestling, but they were not a fan of WWF. Not at all. They were WCW kids, okay? So I was watching WCW pretty intermittently, and I was watching it kind of just enough to get enough of the storyline to know what they were talking about, Like, I wasn't, really into it, but I was just kind of watching it. And interestingly enough, they moved on, but I kind of didn't, and I just kind of kept watching. I utterly refused to watch WWF. It was the fucking shit. It was terrible. It was god-awful. This WCW stuff. This is what real wrestling looks like. I was 8. Leave me alone. I was 8 years old. And I should say, I watched it until WCW closed in 01. And I was really sad. So, in fact, I still have the last Nitro ever, recorded on some tape. I recorded a lot of shows. I don't know why I did that, but I do. I've actually got a lot of bootleg Nitros and Thunders and a couple of pay-per-views even. I got New Blood Rising on VHS. Oh boy. Judy Bagwell on a pole. There you go, Russo. Good call. Anyway, and I kind of, and I should say, I started watching a little bit of WWF with the Radicals, because some of my favorite wrestlers, and I'll talk about it later with another question, were in the Radicals, and so they bopped over to WWF, and I wasn't seeing them on WCW anymore. It made me sad. And I was like, ah. So I watched some WWF. I still hated it, but I'm like, but I like the Radicals. And so I kind of, right when the Radicals started around, I started getting more aware of WWF. And then, of course, when Nitro folded, there was nothing but WWF. So I watched that. And I watched it for maybe a year, before I just gave up. And I stopped watching wrestling entirely. I kind of swore off it. So 01. And I went through, it was basically right when I started in high school, basically. Ish. Yeah. Wait, hold on. 12. Yeah, right around there. And so, I went through that. I went through all that, for a while without watching wrestling, and basically saying, because, well, there's nothing with the WWF, and fuck the WWF. In 05, I had heard of this company called TNA, and they were just, I can't remember if TNA had just, see, this is where, looking things up before I start talking would be a good idea. I can't remember if they had, they couldn't have been on Spike yet. They were still doing pay-per-views, I think. God, I could be wrong. I don't know. I remember in 05 I started watching. And I really dug it, actually. It was TNA. TNA was the thing that got me back into wrestling. It really was. And I still look back on those, the 05 and 06 is kind of really fondly remembering those years. Now, interestingly enough, a lot of my friends from theater, I was a theater kid in high school, surprise. And so, a lot of my friends, were watching wrestling, but they weren't watching TNA. They were watching the WWF, or E at the time. I don't know that timeline. Anyway, so, I would, kind of casually watch it, and I would go over their house, if they were watching Raw, they were like, hey, you want to watch Raw? I'm like, yeah, what the fuck ever, I'll watch Raw. I'm going to bitch about it the entire time, but I'll watch Raw, This doesn't have AJ Styles, fuck it, That was kind of my approach. And so, around, but I started getting more into it, and around 2007, when I graduated, I started really getting more into WWF or E at the time. I'm just going to say WWE for the purposes of clarity, but you all know what I mean whenever I say that. And so I decided to kind of, shore up my wrestling knowledge. And luckily I had a friend who's really diehard into wrestling and had just tons of DVDs and VHSs, boxes and boxes and boxes. And I spent probably that whole summer just like borrowing everything from my friend, just pouring through, and we would just hang out and watch wrestling, and really got a sense for kind of what it was that I was missing throughout the Attitude Era. And I'm not going to glorify the Attitude Era like I was missing much. Trust me, it was not as great as people remember it. The nostalgia goggles need to come off, I think, a little, but that's a topic for another discussion. Yeah, so my wrestling history is a little weird. I can tell you some stuff about WCW, but not a lot previous to NWO. And I can tell you some stuff about TNA. In fact, I know a lot about TNA, which is weird. But when it comes to WWF, I know some stuff. But most of it comes actually from not watching firsthand, but watching, through DVDs and all that stuff. So that is my wrestling history. That is kind of where I'm coming from. Is I, sort of really spotty history, really on and off, but considerably into it now, of course. Who is the most overrated smart fan wrestler? I would have to say Shelton Benjamin is probably the most overrated smart fan wrestler. I think he does some great spots, and, he's a good spot monkey. Good for him. Every era needs one. But at the same time, I just don't see him bringing anything else to the table. He's not very charismatic. They can't talk too well. His actual wrestling is okay, but nothing superior or grandiose. Really, I don't get the hype behind him. And so, yeah. Shelton Benjamin, I just don't get it, I guess. I just don't understand why people are so into him. I didn't care when he was a part of the world's greatest tag team, which is one of the stupidest fucking tag teams ever. Anyway, I just didn't care. And Shelton Benjamin just feels totally overrated to me. What sparked the idea for No Holds Barred? Yeah, okay, so let's see. Let me see if I can do this. No Holds Barred came about. I was working at KPSU at the time, and I already had kind of a radio show that I was doing. This was a pop culture oriented show. It was, I did reviews of video games, movies, comics, and television. That was the four corners of the show, and it was on radio, and I enjoyed it. I like radio a lot. And my partner at the time, who's co-hosting the show with me, kind of unofficially, but he was on so often that he was basically co-hosting the show. And he said, "Hey, have you seen some internet reviews?" And I'm like, "Well, like, what do you mean? Like, I don't know what do you mean?" He's like, "Well, you try, you're trying to be like funny with your reviews and shit." And I was like, "Yeah, try to be entertaining." He's like, "Yeah, but there's like a whole bunch of people who are doing that on the internet." And I'm like, "The internet? The internet? No. The radio's where all the cool kids are." Internet. I literally, by the way, was my mentality at the time. I was like, fuck that noise. Fuck the internet. Goddamn, YouTube shit? Ugh, no. What could possibly be on the internet? And then my friend showed me, he was a big fan of Spoonie, actually. And if you're not familiar with Spoonie, all this is going to be totally lost on you. But if you are a fan of Spoonie, he said that I have a delivery that's similar to Spoonie's, and I no. But, whatever. I guess. I don't know. I don't hear it. And actually, I've heard like 2 people say yes, that yes, I do. So, whatever. Anyway, the point of the matter is this. I actually was looking around, and I'm like, hang on. His name is Noah Antweiler in real life. And I was bopping around his site, and I happened to stumble upon a review that I actually remembered. A written review. And come to find out that I actually had been a fan of Spoonies for like years. Long before he ever got on the internet. In fact, I was reading his movie reviews from Nights at the Dinner Table and loving them. And actually a good portion of kind of where my radio show had come from kind of came from that. actually, was Spoonie's and other people, of course, their review shows. Yeah, and I'll talk a little bit in another question about my opinions on reviewing and what makes a good review show. But in general, it was from that I kind of got into it more and more and started watching a lot of different folks. Mainly that guy with the glasses. I'm not a big old school video game player. I mean, I play a lot of video games now, but I wasn't old school, and so I didn't get screwattack.com. Like, I just didn't get it. It was like, okay, I understand, but I just wasn't for me. And I kind of started going, you know what? I should really try this out, and I wanted to do something that nobody was doing, or at the very least, a subject that wasn't given, I think, enough discussion when it comes to the review show format. And I was thinking about all the stuff that I like, and I'm like, well, okay, I like, I dig movies, and, I play some video games, and I play a lot of pen and paper RPGs, but, that's hard as fuck to make entertaining. Well, yeah, there's some ways to make it entertaining, but not exactly on a review show scale, So I was just thinking about what to do, and I remember, and I've been watching wrestling for a while, and I wonder if I can make this work. And so that's literally it. It's about as uninspired as it really sounds. This is that, like, I was doing a radio show, and that led me to, getting into the review, online review shows, and that led me to kind of try my hand at it myself with a topic that I particularly enjoyed and I thought that was underutilized, which is wrestling.